for those of you just catching maybe your first day trading recap of the Sector Secrets Mastery, I want to show you where you can find these and all the past recaps that I've done. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and every day that we do have a day trade, because we don't have them every day, I'll record a recap. And if you head on over to YouTube, and you can either search my name, or if you already have my YouTube, it's youtube.com/@Raghee Horner. You can check out not only these videos, but a whole lot more. So scroll down the list here, and you'll see that we have the general videos, a bunch of shorts, some explainers on some different topics. But if you scroll, I just recorded a swing trading recap of our swings from last week, and I'll start doing this weekly again. And here is the day trading recap. So you can see here, we've been doing these actually for about 2 weeks now. So if there is no recap, it's because there wasn't a day trade that day. So I just want to make sure everyone knows where to find this. And I've also been, by the way, posting some videos on the 0 days to expiration SPX options. I don't do these a lot, but I get a lot of requests about how we can use the tools in the Sector Secrets Mastery to do it. And then I'm also going to start putting in some long-term account growth, active investing videos on my channel as well. Now, these are not in any way going to replace what you get in the Sector Secrets Mastery, but they're a great place to get some ongoing understanding of what we're doing and a great recap, well, of what we did do. Okay. All right. So just be sure to click the subscribe button so you get notified of whenever I do a new update. All right. So we're going to kick this off with the first day trade of the morning. And you can see there from the notes, it was the IWM right here. And the idea was to buy IWM 241 calls when the RTY sunk down to, let me scroll back to the morning. There we go. When it sunk down to 24.49.8 to 24.50, which was right in this area here. And this was happening between 9:40, so that's a 5-minute candle, which takes you from 9:40 to 9:45, all the way to 9:45 to then 9:50. So you had a lot of time in this window where we kept hitting this zone. So one of the things I mentioned to the traders when we are taking day trades is we never chase. All right, we never chase. Sometimes price action will dip down there just once, and other times price action will return a number of times, and this obviously was the latter. It revisited a number of times, giving us the fill. Now, one of the things that I've been wanting to do is walk you through some pricing. So the first scale out, by the way, was when we got up to this area at 24.58. And notice that's all in the alert from the get-go, where we're getting in and where we're getting out, right? So that happened right in here. And that was at, you can see there, 10:05. Let's plot the option price together. All right, so this was earlier this morning. I don't have it anymore. We'll walk through that in just a moment. So this is the 5-minute chart coming up of the option that we bought. And one of the things that I know a lot of you are getting very good at is plotting the option. And by the way, for those of you that ask, Rog, do you use the theoretical? I mean, look at how far off the theoretical is. No, I absolutely do not use the theoretical, and I just like to remove it from my site whenever it pops up. All right, so we get that thing out of the way, and we can see what was actually happening in the IWM. Awesome. So we know that this thing was dipping into the zone right in this window here. So that gives you an idea of where, take a peek, price was on that dip. Now, when you look at the room, when I ask everyone in the Sector Secrets Mastery room, hey, where did you get a fill? You'll see that there's some variation in price. And, really a pretty decent fill here was probably anywhere from about 145 to probably even 135, right? So that was where the price action was when we got in, anywhere between $135 an option to $145 an option. And as it hit our target, we had mentioned this in the notes, it was trading about 180 to 185. So this was roughly, 40 to 50 cents, or as it's funny that we talk about cents when we're pricing the option, but the actual dollars was $40 to $50 per contract. And here's the important part. When we hit this T1 up in here, we moved to break even, and you can see this right here was where we said bye-bye to the trade. And that's it, right? And that's really it. So ultimately, we had 2 tests of this level up in here, and that was the first trade of the morning. All right, next up was silver. Now, I have a weird relationship, kind of a love-hate with silver, which is silver, you give us some great triggers, but golly, the value of the option moves so slowly, and it's such an inexpensive option. To get a really great needle-moving trade in the account, we've got to buy quite a few of them. But it's also great for smaller accounts that are just getting the hang of futures trading or options trading. So it's a great way to kind of use the ETF options as training wheels to eventually trade the silver futures. Or for those of you that are smaller options traders, this is an inexpensive option to start your journey with. All right, so here we wanted to buy, and notice the time we sent this out, basically 9 minutes to 10. And we wanted to buy as silver sunk down to 46.75, right in here, 46.75 to 46.70. And we got all the way down to 64. So you can see this was happening at 9:45, 9:50, 9:55, right? So in that area. So the time, where we're getting into this, and it not only got to our trigger, it got about, 11 cents below the top end of our 4-cent range. So that gives traders a lot of time to not only get the fill, but maybe even a little bit of price improvement, right? Moderate was down at 68. And so if you're waiting for both triggers, you got an opportunity to do that. It never got down to the conservative. It was about a 2 cent shy. So 2 out of the 3 triggers got filled on silver. Now, if we go grab the silver 3 October 41 call and plot that, let's see what that looks like there. And I love doing this because, again, when traders say, well, what did we make on the trade? This is a really good way to see it in the price of the option. So here is that window. And look at the range. Anywhere from about $1.50 to about $1.45. I'm not going to ever presume anyone catches the wick. But if you got a fill from anywhere from even 153, 155 to 145, that's fine. So think of it this way. Our cost is in this area. And I know a lot of you, especially if you're moving size like I can sometimes, you'll pepper the bid. And I might put in a bunch of bids at 145. I might put in a bunch of bids at 150. I might put in a bunch of bids at 155 so that the total of my budget can get filled. So on the way back up on silver, the idea was to scale out as price got to 46.88 on SI. So let's go back to that SI contract just for a moment, or I'll do this on my other screen. And let me give you the time that silver reached the first target. And again, that time is where we can look at what the price of the option was. So silver moving up to 46.88 happened at, I'll tell you right now, because we actually went way beyond that. We'll get to that in a moment too. So 46.88 we reached, and we actually got all the way up to, I believe it was 47.25 a number of times. So silver really did move pretty nicely. But of course, it's such a slow moving option. So 46.88, we hit that right around 10:07, right? So just after 10 o'clock. And you'll see that here right in this area. So that option went to 166. Like many of you said, Rog, that was 12, 14%. Right, but remember what happened here. At least we can take a little something off the table, right, which is cool. But more importantly, we can move to a break-even stop. That's the important part about the first target not being an overly ambitious level. Now, silver T2 was 47.05, and we hit that right around 10:30. So it moves up a little bit more, and here we go. Now we're talking a little bit better return. I'd say anywhere between 170 to 175 was a nice scale out. So again, silver doesn't tend to move a lot, but darn it, it's so darn cheap. So, you know, it's nothing for some traders to say, Rog, I can buy 5 contracts here, you know, or I could buy, say, 10 contracts here. I'll scale out of about 5, and then I'll scale out again of another 2 or 3. And then if it sinks back down to the T1, as it did right here, I'll take the remaining 2 or 3 contracts off the table. So scale out, and then tighten stop. So not a terrible trade, but you know, look, that's the downside of silver. A pretty good move in silver is maybe going to amount to a 40, 50 cent move, which is not bad if you can trade a good number of contracts. And again, all of these are going to be in the notes. The last trade we took right before break was in GDX. So this was the one so at this point in the morning, we're basically 2 for 2. And I'm thinking, all right, well, GDX is moving pretty well. I know that Barrick is moving down lower pretty sharply today. Newmont was moving down lower sharply today. We're in that GDX swing. So this is apart from that swing trade. And now we're looking at day trade. All right. So when I look at here, that's an hourly price movement range entry. And it was well above the previous session close, which is why I'm going to remain bullish. Notice we set this up right around 1020. So really the 1015 to 1020 candle, which is this one where my cursor's on top of, that's where we set it up. And then it triggered for the next, really easily the next 2 5-minute candles. So if I look at that there, what I have, by the way, is not only a move into the daily price movement range, but it's also a minor low inside the range. So those of you that follow that favorite price pattern of mine, the minor low, which is probably one of the most powerful price patterns I've ever used in my life. My absolute favorite. Fantastic confirmation of a shift. All right, so when we look at the GDX, we know that this sunk down around 1015, 1020, and into the early part of 1020. The gold miners is the total, numerous stocks, including Barrick, including Newmont Mining, Agnico, Wheaton, there's Franco-Nevada, I believe, is in there too. There's a lot of stocks in GDX. When you don't bet on an individual name, but rather the group, what you're trying to do is dilute some of the underperformers while still being able to take advantage of some of the outperformers. So now let's chart that particular symbol. And all I'm doing, gang, is on Thinkorswim, and many other platforms I believe do this as well, but Thinkorswim makes it really easy, is I'm just going and charting the GDX October 3 75 call on the screen. And here's that window, 1015 to 1020, the early part of the 1020 candle. So you can see here, the fill could be easily anywhere between about 180 to about 170-ish, that area, right? And ultimately what we want to remember is by charting the option, and a lot of you I know will switch to the chart of the option when you're bidding, because now you're looking at the very thing you're buying. We're not buying GDX shares, we're buying GDX calls, and it makes it much easier to understand where it's been and where it might be going. So you can see here anywhere from about 178, 180, we'll call it 180, to about 175 per contract. All right, so this kind of had some fits and starts, but notice that GDX, for the most part, held on to this support. It actually If you look at the option even, the option itself developed a Darvis. Not that I'm charting the option, but a lot of you have told me, hey, Rog, it's kind of neat to see the same tools that we would look at on GDX form on the option. It's kind of neat. It sort of gives a little bit more texture to the trade. The first idea was to scale it out at 76.20, which we did right into about 11 o'clock, right? So I believe we did that right into about 11. So I'm going to go take a look at that GDX. Yeah, I think we did that right into about 11 o'clock, 76.20, just after 11. So it moved up into this area just shy of $2. Right, nothing to write home about. But again, the idea is, and let's think about this for a moment. If I can move to the break even a little sooner, let's plot GDX again. If I can move to break even a little bit sooner, rather than being too ambitious about expecting a trade to go in my favor in a giant way, what I'm able to do, and I think it was 11:30, not 11 o'clock. I did it once around 11. It did it again around 11:30. Cool. And so this gives us a couple different chances to get out of GDX, move to break even, and maybe one of these wicks took you out at break even. That's fine. And then it continued up to 76.60. Now, the moral of the story is this. Once you get out of the first target, what are you looking for? You're looking for hourly price movement ranges. You're looking for Darvis levels. You're looking for something to say there's an obstacle to the upside. This didn't follow through a whole heck of a lot, but at least we got enough follow through so that we could scale out. And then some of you might have said, Rog, as this thing continued higher, that T2 of 100% never happened, right? We never saw 3 and change on the value. So this one, yeah, it's a winner. A little disappointing that we didn't get more movement, but not surprising because Barrick and Newmont Mining are going absolutely berserk in terms of going to the downside. And, this is where sometimes on a Monday, I'm not usually going to see 3-day trades, but I'm pretty stoked that we went 3 for 3. And even if it was kind of a muted day, the most important takeaway, I think, in this conversation is know your break evens. And if the trade doesn't continue higher, as sometimes some will, like silver did a pretty good job, hit a T2. But when it doesn't, look, if the trade says we're right back to where it started and you scaled out at a T1, get out, right? Just close it out and say, thanks for the change. I'll come back and work the process again tomorrow. And those are the 3-day trades that we had this morning in the Sector Secrets Mastery. That's how we manage them. Those are the tools that we use. And plotting those option prices does make it a whole lot easier to understand what we're buying and the value of the thing when we're taking profit.